I'm going to call to order the July the 5th work session for the Board of Commissioners. I wanted to, first thing we have is the agenda before us. We have a motion to approve the agenda that would include moving the any consent items over to our agenda for for July the 19th. We have a motion to approve the agenda, as well as moving the consent items to July the 19th. We have a motion. We have a second. We have a motion. We have a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion carries. First matter we have is under new business is proposed development at the corner of Union Street and Corbin, page 69.
Excuse me, I'm going to ask Mark Hermans to join me, if you would, please. The county has been approached by the Concord Rotary, and Mark is here representing the Rotary Club, about possible use of the vacant corner or the piece of property that we own at the corner of Union Street and South and Corbin Avenue. As you know, we constructed the annex. That corner from there has been undeveloped. We did conduct a charrette some years ago. We were doing the sheriff's office and jail master plan and had some ideas for the property, which did include the possibility of a park or the county selling that property for an office building. Of course, with the market as it is, we haven't seen any interest in the office building, but the Rotary has now approached us about the possibility of building a park there, and he'll go through some of those details. And really the purpose of this presentation is just to get a consensus from the board. It's not an action item at this point. It would come back to you once any further plans and agreements were developed, but before they went through the due diligence that's required and all that planning, we did want to introduce this subject to the board and get your feedback on it. And with that, I'll let Mark go through some of the details.
The Concord Rotary Club, I think in conjunction with potentially Cabarrus Rotary Club also, we're still looking at that, and some of the other local organizations. You can see a plan on the screen here. This is a sort of a conceptual plan. The concept is to build a town center of sorts. The circle you see in the middle is a fountain with, they call it dancing waters, so there's no actual pool of water, and there's different ways it can be activated by motion detectors or timing, and it kind of shoots water out and kids can play in it and things like that. So it's got a fountain concept in the middle. And then the structure around the top and right side is really an area for vending. The Piedmont Farmers Market Group would be one of the big uses that we would love to see here. Also the Arts Walk. The corner where the two structures sort of intersect, we have an idea of doing some kind of a stage type thing there where you might see puppet shows or other small performances. We've spoken with Diane Young at the CDDC, and she does not think that Union Street Live would go here. She feels like that might be too big. I'm kind of hopeful for the long term that might actually migrate. If we can build something beautiful, they may come to us in the long term and say, hey, we want to be over there. But we're in the very early stages. We haven't really done any of the exploration, in terms of, the stormwater runoff or the impervious surface or anything like that. We're basically just looking to get the concept on the table and to get a dialogue going. We're talking about raising 100% of the money to build through, fundraising and other sources. Open any questions or?
For the board to know, as I'm a member of the Cabarrus Rotary Club, and it has been brought up to us, but there's been no vote on the Cabarrus Rotary board as to participation or anything like that, so that has not been voted on. So when that occurs, whether it's yay or nay, I will certainly bring it to the board as to whether or not there is an issue in regards to a conflict or potential conflict. But I wanted to let you know that has not come to our board, and that has not been discussed by our board. Any questions for Mr. Hermans?
If I understand that you said the Rotary will raise 100% of the funds, will the Rotary then maintain the park as well?
We're looking at different solutions for the maintenance question. One option, of course, is for the county to take on some of that maintenance. I've also had some preliminary discussions with Wasatch for the maintenance of the water feature. And I think, I'm confident that they're willing to take on the maintenance of the fountain itself. I think one of the design principles that we're going to try to use is really to build a low-maintenance facility. And we've been in touch with some of the staff of the county on, what issues and what recurring maintenances they don't want to have to do. Changing light bulbs, just cutting grass versus getting out the trimmer. And so we're trying to the goal is to build a relatively low-maintenance facility. But we will be looking at the county to take on some of that responsibility.
What, I participated about 5 years ago in I think a 3-day-long educational thing for open space. And actually my project was one we're looking at, not just this, but also the area along the creek that's down behind the jail. It's now in a conservation easement of eventually developing that like this as well, with places for tents where you can have an open air market down through there. Is, as in many discussion of it, even eventually going further, looking at something else down in that, along in that little valley there.
Yeah, we'd love to tie this into some of the greenways that exist in that area you're referring to. And we've had a lot of, excitement in the community. And I think we're looking to take it. Jay mentioned that the Cabarrus Club has not voted on anything. The Concord Club has voted to support this project. So we are trying to move this thing along.
One question I have as well is, I know this is preliminary, like you said, but there's, I think one time a concern with City of Concord with perhaps what appears to be the homeless that are hanging about and doing. Are there going to be benches in this park?
That'll of course be one of the considerations. Somebody actually at one of our meetings threw out the idea of having sprinklers turn on.
I know
every 20 minutes in the middle of the night, but I do recognize that that's an issue.
Right.
Somebody else said that if we do benches, that you can strategically put armrests in those benches. And so we recognize the issue, and I think we will address it in our design. What you're looking at here is by no means anywhere near a finished design.
Right.
It's just sort of a conceptual plan.
Yeah, I think that's something that needs to be.
Yeah, and I've talked with some of the county staff about how you address that too.
Right.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
That's the reason they got a police department to take care of the homeless. But my question is, did the county have any other plans for that lot?
No, there really haven't been any firm plans for it. As Jonathan mentioned, there was a charrette held during the process of the jail planning, and nothing was ever finalized, no final plan. Plus, there was never any additional funding lying around for anything either. So the intent had just been to just maintain the property, keep it looking good, and if a use comes about that commissioners are favorable to, then it would be available for that.
There are limitations to the site. The drive that's behind is actually an access drive to the backside of the annex and to the sheriff's complex. It has a gate, but it is an emergency access. There's also the drive off of Corbin Street, or the pad off of Corbin Street. That's really an access to where the backflow preventers are. There's also a fueling station on the side of the annex. So where it shows the possibility of some cars there, that's really not feasible. So that's already a change we've discussed making. So it really limits the amount of area that could be developed on the property.
One thing I think is important that, if this is something that the Board of Commissioners are willing to support, we need to make certain that the word gets out to the community, specifically the downtown community, what is going to go there, because when we did have the charrette years ago, they were very adamant not to have a park there for several reasons. And if we then support this, it needs to be understood as to the reasons behind it, I think. And I think there were some other things they were very vocal about what they did not want. And I believe that we have that information in when we did the charrettes. I believe Mr. Marshall has, or
We do.
somebody in the department has it. So that it's very
Okay.
important to understand what those concerns were at that point in time, so they can be addressed now at the front end as opposed to the tail end.
I think also, and Jonathan can answer this question, I think because that site was a part of the jail conditional use, then any other use of it would have to be approved by the planning board of the city, or has that
We
been
were looking at
determined
that, the jail conditional use was really, it was a special use permit for the jail, the annex, the offices, but this corner has still just got the underlying CC zoning, which allows a park. I mean, certainly, one of the items we discussed with them was meeting very early with the city of Concord and their development services to go through those, but I think it just has to comply with the CC zoning, which does permit it.
For Concord Rotary to move forward, I'm certain they need to have some guidance from us. Is this, in conceptual idea, something that we're willing to agree with, or do you want something more concrete before maybe a more, not a more formal vote, but more of a consensus? What is it that y'all would like to have before you're comfortable in saying, yes, this idea like we have before us is okay, or no, we don't want anything done with that, we want to leave it the way it is for right now? Because I'm certain they need to have some sort of guidance right now before
Absolutely.
they move forward.
There's been a lot of talk, but we're ready to move forward, and of course, we need, your support. I think there's one of the biggest goals, I think, is to maintain the versatility of the use for the site. And we really want it to be a town center is how we want you to think of it. And I'm sure that once it's built, all kinds of different uses will come to it.
Well, I'm certainly, I think that, listening to some of the concerns, I think some things we can work around, and I think work through those issues, and I think certainly to address those things that were concerns several years ago with downtown residents, I'd be supportive of moving forward with it. I mean, if it sounds like it's going to be 100% fundraising, private money that would go to build the park, sounds like maintenance would be a relatively low-cost thing to achieve, and, that it, even though it looks pretty with green grass there, it will look pretty downtown to have a big green lot stuck in the middle of downtown, But then the other thing is I don't think we're, given the turnover and the vacancy we have in downtown Concord, I don't know whether anybody, private person, is going to see it as a viable market to come and buy that and build a structure on it, office space on it, so.
I'm certainly not opposed to the Concord Rotary moving forward with this. I know this is all preliminary as well, but would the Rotary would be the owner of this property, or would Cabarrus County?
No, the county would still
own it.
maintain that ownership.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I think, however, moving forward, I think perhaps some input from the city of Concord, whether they think a park is suitable for that property or not, and especially I think my concerns about the homeless, and I know right now I think there's an issue with the homeless gathering in front of the library and kind of just hanging out there, and I don't know if they'll migrate down to this park or what, but I think that's certainly a concern that needs to be talked about and have some sort of plan or some way to address that.
Yeah.
I think, I don't have a problem with it as long as we know, sure that the residents in that area approve of it. I don't want to see us have another lawsuit over like we did in the jail.
I think it'd be nice to have something there on the corner, but that'll be the city zoning, just like the jail was, to decide whether that's something appropriate there or not. So I would wait for more information to make a final decision on it, which is what we're going to have to do anyway. But
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mind you exploring anything. I just, I was under the impression that the city didn't want to have a park on that corner. So what that means, I don't know, but once you go through there,
That'll be one of the things.
planning and zoning and stuff, that may make a
difference.
difference in itself. But that was the
Right.
impression I had, was that their master plan for the downtown area, I think, had a building on it. And that, but again, I could be wrong. That could be old data too, so. But that looks nice, as far as that goes. For the dancing fountain,
Yes.
that's not a splash pad, that's a fountain.
It's not a splash pad.
Okay.
It's not. And I don't really know a whole lot about fountains, but I think we're about to learn a lot. And
A fountain would have some type of a barrier to keep you from getting into. A
It's-
splash pad is meant for you to run into.
right. Well,
So,
my understanding
that's
is
why.
that there's like a drainage system, and it doesn't mean that there's necessarily a wall around it. Although on the picture, there's sort of some benches with some plantings around it to contain it a bit.
But I mean, if you have a flat area that has fountains shooting up,
Right.
then the weather that we've been having lately, you're gonna have people in bathing suits jumping in the fountain.
Right,
That's a
which-
splash pad.
Which
That's what I call a
I
splash pad.
think that's okay. That's part of the intent.
Okay, that's what I was asking. Is it a
That-
fountain? A fountain you don't get into unless you're in Italy and you're
It has
trying to
different
make some
colored
touristy
lights.
picture.
So for
but-
example, during the Christmas season, you've got red and green lights. In the
Uh-huh.
summertime, you may have kids splashing in it. Yeah.
Okay.
It's,
So that would be a liability issue that, I know they have one in Kannapolis. They have a splash pad in Kannapolis.
That's right, yeah.
So that would be a liability issue if you have kids. They also, I think Dan Nicholas Park has one. It's great in the summertime for kids. You just
Right.
need to make sure if somebody slips and falls, what that means and everything else. So-
Right.
But I think once you go to the city, we can see what the master plan is and what they say from planning and zoning will give us a better indication. Because I know with the jail, a lot of people said, well, why are you putting in fake windows and things like that, and criticized us. And the point of the matter was, it wasn't really us, that was the City of Concord's planning
Yeah.
and zoning department that said you had to make it look like that.
Yeah.
And, you know, kind of, I would presume, put some extra cost in there. So
yeah.
I think that's the
I think
roadblock
we've
you're going
had
to hit
some
first.
preliminary talks with the city planning department, but I think we need to formalize it a bit more with them too. And there's some issues there, I think, with their zoning laws and so on. So,
The dancing fountain, now, if it's like the one I've seen, there's one in the Detroit airport.
okay.
And what it does, it's set up with some kind of computer program.
Yeah.
That opens and shuts valves.
Yep.
So what you have happening is you will have a stream of water that looks like it's just hanging in the air that comes out. I mean, it's just, and there's different patterns and
That's right.
and changes and things like that. So
That's
it's
right.
really almost hypnotic to watch it, but,
Yeah.
but it.
Yeah, it's a pretty dynamic thing, and
But
it
it's
can
like
change
really
with
high
the
pressure,
seasons.
yeah, and it does,
Yeah.
and it changes periodically and,
Right.
and to different
I don't know if you can aim
patterns.
it at the homeless people, but.
Some of the things that I would think that we need to get a better grasp on is, one, I don't think any construction needs to begin until all the money's raised. We
Okay.
don't need to get midway through the project and,
Yep.
oh, by the way,
Sure.
we're $50,000 short, so. I
Right,
think
and
that-
we don't even know exactly what it is we're building, so we're trying to figure out what we're building along with the budget.
Right, so that.
Okay.
I think the biggest thing is that before and it doesn't mean the project can't go forward, but before the construction starts,
Yep,
it needs to be able to be paid for immediately, okay?
understood.
Second, I think that it needs to be an idea of what the Rotary Club of Concord is asking the county to maintain, so we can get an idea about what what you're asking financially of us, if anything.
Sure.
Third, I think that you need to be aware of, conversation needs to be made with Piedmont Farmers Market, because right now, as far as I'm aware, they're pretty much maxed out with farmers markets, and I don't know how quickly they're inclined to open up another farmers market. So that needs to be done. And I think that when y'all are making the design, I think you have a good idea to have the most flexibility in the use of the place, because I don't know how large or what's the smallest size area that can be had to have a productive farmer's market.
Right.
If that makes sense.
I understand,
So-
and we're working with Aaron Newton, of
Good.
course, and getting his input. He's
so-
very knowledgeable on those.
So I think those
Questions?
ideas are good, and I think that it would be good to see those, and once y'all can come a little bit closer to a final product, it'd be great to see, and then we can give us our support. And I think the very last thing is, along the way, is to stay in touch with the downtown crowd, and maybe get some background information from Mr. Marshall's office about what their concerns were, and they may have been alleviated, don't know, but.
Okay, great.
Okay?
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Next matter we have is page 73, which is
I'll be doing it.
Food Policy Council approval of locally grown logo licensing agreement.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Aaron Newton, the local food system program coordinator, isn't here today in a strange twist of fate. He seems to have contracted food poisoning while he was out of the county. Had he eaten the food that was labeled with the logo you're about to see, I'm sure that wouldn't have happened. I have seen this logo already. The Food Policy Council worked to develop a locally grown logo for marketing purposes primarily, and to raise awareness for food that's produced in the county. The Food Policy Council has been working with handlers, processors, producers, and tailgaters, those selling it at the market, to develop a list of a license agreement for the use of this logo. So what you see on these few pages here are different requirements for these different groups. If the logo is going to be used, you can understand we certainly want to have, the Food Policy Council wants to have some requirements to reflect a certain level of product and service. And so the idea here is to approve these recommendations here that were developed by the Food Policy Council. We have trademarked at a low cost, not the kind of high dollar sorts of copywriting, but trademarked logos like this in the past. It's a very simple process that the county attorney does. It's just done on a statewide basis. There's very little, if any, cost involved in that. So I would recommend that you would put this on consent if you wish, but to approve it nevertheless.
We have any questions for Mr. Day?
John, I was looking here, are there any fees associated with entering a license agreement on the part of the
There
licensee?
was discussion, I don't think that they've made any conclusions there, but just for, if they're going to provide, if the council is going to provide actual physical logos, then the idea would be that, yes, they would
Just
sell
recoup the
those.
cost of that?
Right.
Okay.
Do they want to add a spoon to their logo, so it's just not a knife and a fork?
We can pass that along for the group's consideration.
Any other? Huh? That's right. Any other questions?
I've got a question regarding the license agreement for handlers. I assume that'd be restaurants, is that? Or would-
I'm not certain. I'm sorry, I've not reviewed it all. I didn't expect.
It could be restaurants. It
to
could
be
also
doing this.
be,
I didn't know if that was distributors. I assumed it would be restaurants.
it could be restaurants. It also could be the people that are selling at the farmer's market, if they're going to label their food.
Well, then that would be the farm product.
It does appear that it's primarily aimed at restaurants.
Mhm.
Okay, and so underneath, and it's discussing prepared foods. Now, is this something a restaurant will apply to use this logo for every menu item or just one? I was a little confused when reading through it. It says, there's a section that says 50% or more of the content of deli or menu item by volume be locally grown. And then if the items cannot be made with 50% or more locally grown ingredients. I didn't know if that, I don't know how that works. Would you put the logo beside each menu item, or?
I wish I could answer the question. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with its plan. I have seen it done that way elsewhere, where it actually goes beside whatever menu item it applies to,
Okay.
instead of the entire menu, which is,
Right.
would certainly, I would suspect, having it apply to everything that's produced would probably be difficult.
Right, well, that's the point I was getting to, is if it's 50% of all of their food content in the restaurant, that would be impossible for
In
a
fact,
restaurant to achieve that.
it does say singular item rather than items in the reference there, the menu. It says 50% or more of the content of the deli or menu item. So I would think based on that it does refer to a individual item on the menu.
So you would put the logo beside the item.
Correct.
Then under 3, it looks as though that if on page 76 is where I'm reading from,
I see, yes.
Okay. It seems there is that items that cannot be made with 50% or more locally grown ingredients can be displayed with the logo if the product contains a significant portion of locally grown ingredients. So I'd imagine that if you're at a restaurant that a vast majority of the menu, the items are either locally grown or have 50% or have a significant portion of locally grown ingredients, you could probably just use the one logo for all the items. You know, that'd be one thing.
Locally
And
grown
then the
menu.
customer could ask, you know, are these chickpeas here in Cabarrus County, or where are they?
Well, I was thinking
Basically,
about
it's just trying to raise the awareness that we're trying to do.
Yeah, I was thinking about, would be something like a mango salsa. I mean, probably every ingredient except the mangoes would be here, but it probably makes up over 50% of the, just
Right.
make it simple, but something like that. I didn't think it was available, not available.
Are there any other questions? It's a pleasure to place this on consent item
Yeah,
or
that's fine.
new business.
Yeah. I move we put it on consent agenda.
Consent's fine. Go ahead.
We have a motion, we have a second to place it under consent item. All in favor, all consent agenda, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion carries. Next we have is page 84, which is the update on Cabarrus County School System and Kannapolis City School System Q-Scabs.
Thank you.
As it relates, I think we got an email later this afternoon that Mr. Crabtree is ill and is not going to be able to talk about the Kannapolis City School Systems, but we do have Mr. Whitkey here, and Mr. Day will be able to provide some information. I'd call on Mr. Whitkey to come on up, so if we have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had received some questions from county commissioners asking for the status of the various, the many projects that are a part of the qualified construction, school construction bonds that were sold earlier this year. So I did ask the school systems to give us an update. So as you mentioned, Mr. Crabtree isn't here, but Mr. Wiki is, and he has provided a handout that I placed in front of your desks. Lane?
Yes, thank you. As you can see, we have quite a few projects that represent our QSCB project list. The status of most of the projects are that they are in some form or some level of design work. The consultants, except for one, have their contracts in place where we've negotiated that final contract and it's awaiting signature. So the work is ongoing. What we tried to do was show obviously a description of the project, and then also the dates, anticipated bid date and anticipated construction completion date, keeping in mind that a lot of these projects, because of the nature of our business, are governed by when school will be out, so we can actually do the work when the kids and staff are not there. And so we, in some cases, have to wait an entire year before we can do that work, because we have to wait till next summer before we can accomplish it. The one significant question that is certainly relevant to this is how much work will be accomplished by the October 15th date, which is when we have to have expended, committed, I guess, the expenditure of 10% of all the funds. So roughly $1.1 million for our district. And what I've done is I've highlighted in yellow all of those projects which will be bid by that time and under contract. In addition, it's my understanding that we can count architectural fees or design fees as part of that work, and roughly those fees amount to about $800,000 of the total. So taking the fees into account plus all of those things you see in yellow highlighted, we far exceed the 10% requirement, and we will be in very good shape come October 15th.
Any questions for Mr. Whitkey? A lot of them have preliminary design, and it doesn't seem like there needs to be a design for some of the projects. Is that just a holding terminology to say we're trying to figure out all that we're going to need? I mean, because when I talk about design, I always think about, like an architect designs a project.
Yes, yes.
But when we're talking about replacing chillers and controls, I don't think, I mean, you're certainly not drawing something out.
Actually, they are.
Oh, you are?
Yes. In some cases, and not in all cases, but in some cases, we have a unique situation because literally the building was sort of built up around the units as they were installed. In some cases, we literally have to take parts of the building apart to get the old pieces out and the new ones in. We have to make structural modifications in some cases to accommodate the larger units. So it's a bit more involved than just picking one up and taking it out and putting in a new one. The controls are also, it's a different type of, we're going from pneumatic to electronic controls, so that requires some design work as well. I was going to say, the other thing that was interesting to find as we got into QSCB and working with the Department of Public Instruction is that even though our staff might have internally been able to design, if you will, and put out to bid some of these projects, we're not allowed to do that.
Why?
It's the government standard that we have to hire design firms to do this work. We have to bid all projects. We cannot do any of the work ourselves. We cannot buy any product ourselves and give it to a contractor to install. Those are the requirements, and those are the
Can you create
guidelines.
an LLC?
I didn't ask him that. Good point.
You create an LLC of whoever y'all's designers are, and
Yeah.
that's who you contract with.
I didn't approach it from that perspective, but, working within their guidelines, that's the tenets under which we've been working, so. I can understand it to a degree because the concept is it's federal money to help stimulate the local economy, which is to employ more people, everything from including designers to contractors and suppliers and everything else. So it's really, in the best of sense, trying to help the economies.
Well, if we're having to do a lot of that, you may want, certainly as a joint decision of both the Board of Commissioners and the Board of Education, but, it may be good to contact the chamber and see who's there and who's outside the chamber, locally to be able to address some of those issues.
Mhm. And I will say, we attempted, I know our board asked us to ask if we could limit our bidding arena, if you will, to just the county. And again, we were told, no, we have to bid this using the state procurement site, their website. And we can advertise in the county, but we also have to put it on the state procurement sites.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have a couple. What do you consider to be fall, winter, or spring? I mean, what months do you consider to be winter versus fall versus spring?
You're
Does that make sense?
You're asking a northerner now.
Well, no, I mean, you have anticipated bid date of fall, winter, and spring.
Yes, no, yes,
So
ma'am.
that's why, I mean,
Absolutely, that's a reasonable question. Normally, I consider fall to be, September through late October, and winter from November through about February, spring from February through May, and so forth.
and I know that on the constructing of schools, that we had the arrangement between the school systems and the county so that we could get the sales tax back. Are we able to do that with these?
Yes, I believe that is the case.
I know Pam's not here. Do
I
you
know,
I think Pam told me the county owns pretty much all the schools now for that purpose.
Okay, well, I didn't know. I just wanted to make sure, because we definitely would want to get, even though the sales tax has gone down, we definitely want to make sure that you can get that back.
Yes, as far as I know, that's,
And then, I know the answer, but I'm going to ask anyway. On the first section where you have Performance Learning Center, that is at J and Freeze,
yes, I'm sorry, that is correct.
and just so that everybody else knows. And it's okay to, I thought there was something about that one that it had to be done by the time school started, and you have anticipated completion September 30th. Are you going to start it at the old Odell and then move it, or
No, we're
how are you going to
actually,
be able to do that? Because that seems to be another problem.
yes.
Moving would be a problem.
Part of the delay is in actually getting some of the paving work done and all. It is our hope to move students and teachers into the school by start of school in August. There will be some carryover. One area that may not be complete at that time is the administrative portion of that wing. we can block that off and do the work in there past the August 25th start date of school. So they're sort of give and take, but in talking with contractors, the design firm, the architect did find that no one was willing to commit to the August 25th date. And part of it is that we have a number of exit doors that have to be added and control doors that have to be added. And it's delay of, even if we ordered those today, we're looking at an 8-10 week delivery date. That's the thing that's holding us up.
Is this still going on the back side of the school? That was the original,
No,
that's
we-
what I saw, was having it on the back side, that back
No,
wing.
that was where it was planned originally. We've moved it to the front side so that it can be easily accessible and separated as a single wing. If you're familiar with that school, it's the very front wing to, if you were driving up, would be to your left. So actually the first wing that you encounter coming off the road. And that will be the new PLC location. It'll have separate signage and all.
Can the magnet school that's there and the PLC share common areas like the cafeteria? And, because cafeteria's there at the front.
Yes.
Can they share those, or is that an issue with moving it there?
No, they can share them. They'll use them at different times.
Right.
But yes, they can use the same facilities.
I'm a huge proponent of the PLC. So that's
It's
why
a-
I'm asking
it's
about
a
that
great
one.
program.
I think it's been a very good program and helped a lot of students.
Yes.
I've done a number of recommendations for students, too. The other question I have is, and I have no idea, and you probably don't know the complete answer to this yet, because you don't have bids on everything. But if you don't have enough money, for example, if for some reason the money runs out at a site, and I'm going to pick, because you have it highlighted, Northwest Cabarrus High School, have those projects at Northwest been prioritized so that if they run out of money, there's an understanding of what wouldn't get done as part of these funds? Or how are you going to handle that if, and I know you don't know that yet because you haven't gotten bids out, but
Right.
have you talked about that on what happens if you don't have enough funds?
We have. I'll give you a good example. In Beverly Hills and Coltrane and Webb, they were bid together. The Beverly Hills project, because of the most recent, I'm going to say the application of code and safety concerns by the fire department, we've had to go to a higher quality glazing in the windows. So in that case, we actually came in over budget. However, the Coltrane Webb project came in significantly below budget. So we've talked with DPI, and we're going to trade those dollars. We're going to move dollars from Coltrane Webb to pay for those overruns at Beverly Hills. That's what we're going to be trying to do throughout this entire process. To be honest with you, we recognize that, especially with the fact that some of these are going to take a year or longer to complete, we could, depending on the economy again, run into significant problems with increases in material costs. We know that's happening as we speak.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really hard to have that crystal ball gazing be that accurate right now. But I think that we are certainly going to be attacking the projects we need most first, with the idea that, we will get to as many of them as we possibly can. But I think the realization is by our board is that, if push comes to shove and something has to be dropped from the program, we're going to need to identify those projects fairly shortly. And we'll be doing that in the next few months. So. And I will be, as I think, I don't know if you said it to this afternoon, John, but we do intend to update you as we do our board on a monthly basis with this information. So.
Okay, thank you. That'll be good to hear. I mean, it's good to have a lot of these projects covered. And there are things that need to be done one way or the other. I mean, chillers and boilers and things like that at some point have to be replaced. And they can be, obviously, as we can see, very expensive.
Yes.
So I knew that you had to commit some money, so I'm glad to hear that you've identified so that we won't lose anything. Because the one thing we don't want to do is start projects and then run out of money or
absolutely.
not spend it the way in the time frame given, and then we're stuck having to pay for something that, is halfway done or
Right.
not be able to use, not be able to do the projects or whatever. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't think there's any action that we need to take. It's just more of an update for what's going on.
That's correct.
Thank you very much, Mr. Whitkey. I
You're welcome.
appreciate it. Next matter we have is page 86, which is the Sheriff's Office leasing kitchen space in a new detention center to Airmark. I call on our Chief Deputy Paul Hunt, and I guess Mr. Planty.
Plant.
If you can please let us know what's going on.
Good afternoon. With me, I have Kevin Plant, who's the district manager for Airmark. They provide food service for the county jail and will continue to do so with the moving into the new facility. He came to me a while back about the possibility of leasing some space in the kitchen to be able to do some other projects. The first one he came to me with was Anson County Meals on Wheels, and then now I think he's got a contract possibly up with the senior center for the aging nutrition contract, which would be leasing space from our facility. I'll let him explain what they'll be doing and monetary things there, and just, seeing if that would be in agreement for all of you, for us to do that. It would not, what we've discussed, it will not hinder us in any way. The meals will be prepared mid-morning, so it won't interfere with breakfast or lunch with the jail, so it will not interfere with our operations there at the jail at all.
Great, thank you. We've had a relationship with the county and the sheriff's office for about 12 years now. We're always looking for opportunities to save the county money and increase our services, whether it's commissary, retail programs, whatever it may be. We currently have 6 Meals on Wheels programs in North Carolina. Again, I've talked to the chief over the last 2 years about Cabarrus County. Anson County's services went out to bid. They're a very small facility. They don't actually have kitchen equipment on site. So we actually do their inmate meals from Stanley County. At Stanley County, which is only about 100 population jail, we also do their Meals on Wheels program. Now, Anson County's Meals on Wheels has come out. We've pretty much maxed out that space. With the new facility that you all have here, which is a great facility, we brought the opportunity to the chief. So basically, all we're asking is if we're allowed to utilize the space. First, we'll talk about Anson County Meals on Wheels. It would only be for 1 meal per day, lunch, 5 days a week, as opposed to 7 days, 3 times a day is what we do. Would be totally separate labor, a van we would purchase, all the small wares, pots and pans, etc. We would just use the facility. In return to the county, call it what you want, a lease, rent, a credit to the meals for the jail, we propose a return of $6,000, which we assume will certainly pay for any water or gas that we would utilize. The second proposal is we currently have a bid for the senior services for Cabarrus County. Again, same proposal. We would be able to do that facility. I believe Mike will speak about this a little bit later. According to my quick math, we're offering about a $60,000 savings to the county in the price for the senior services. The meals, it would be about $170 per day for Anson County, and it's approximately $270 for Cabarrus County. Again, only 1 meal period per day, 5 days a week. Questions?
Before we get into questions, why don't we have Mike come up and talk to us about, since it seems to be somewhat intertwined, it's the very next item, and give us an idea about the nutrition program, then food vendor. You can sit next. And Mike, if you can tell us, and that way we can address all of it at one time, possibly.
Well, our contract would definitely be contingent on,
You might want to check your mic and see if it's on. Has it got a green light?
I thought it was, sorry.
Yeah.
Our contract would be contingent on the agreement with the jail, because if they don't have a kitchen, then our contract's null and void. It's not gonna happen, but we did submit a bid, and Airmark did come in as a low bid. And we have been in a series of meetings with them and the sheriff's department and the deputy managers, and we've worked through issues that we had. Our situation is that we're serving 5 nutrition sites, 5 days a week, lunch only. And their proposal is to operate out of the kitchen at the jail and serve our county. Right now, our contract is with Punchy's Diner, and it ends the end of July. August 1st is when our contract would go into place. But again, it's contingent upon the agreement between Aramark and the Sheriff's Department.
Well, let me get a better understanding
Sure.
in regards to all three. In regards to Aramark using the facility for the Anson County Meals on Wheels, it's a proposal of paying the county or the county receiving a credit of $6,000 a year?
Correct, $500 a month.
Okay. So that'd be roughly $25 a day.
$40 for the Monday through Friday, 20 days a month.
Okay, $40 Monday through Friday. And by using our facility, is that, you're saying that the energy, the use of the facility and all of that would be at $40? You're valuing it at $40, obviously. I can't imagine it being that low. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Well, we based it off of the other Meals on Wheels programs we do in the region, North Carolina, South Carolina. And to be honest with you, the majority of the counties that we do, like counties, Cabarrus County Jail, Cabarrus County Senior Services, they don't usually give the detention facility a credit.
Okay.
The county looks at it as, it's a credit to the county, you can split it any way you'd want. So as an example, for Cabarrus County, when we originally started speaking, that was the number we threw out. That was the number we put into the proposal. You could say it's $2,000 a month. That would just increase the cost for the Meals to Senior Services. But in the grand scheme, we were looking at the overall savings.
Okay, so the overall savings is actually $66,000 because we're saving $60,000 on the contract and then $60,000 and then $6,000 as a credit. Is that correct, Mr. Murphy?
Yeah, I need to look at the numbers. My numbers were somewhere in the 35,000 range. It's a
Okay.
69-cent per meal savings, and we're looking at 55,000 meals is what we had estimated.
Okay, so $35,000 would be a savings. Okay. Any other questions, Mr. Burge, Commissioner Burge?
Who maintains the equipment over there if y'all do the cooking?
The maintenance agreements are with the county.
Okay.
We have a clause in there that if we were to damage anything through our negligence, we would repair it. We maintain the cleaning, the sanitation, the daily upkeep of it beyond normal wear and tear. That would go through the county contracts.
Will that $6,000 cover the cost of gas and electricity for a year?
We assume it would based on the other counties that we deal with. You know, again, our assumption is the refrigerators are already working for, you know, everything that we're doing on a daily basis. We're already using the ovens and steamers. And again, it's,
And if, to follow up on Commissioner Burge's question, is if it doesn't, then whatever it increases to, say it increases to $12,000, that additional $6,000 would be taken out of this $35,000 savings, so it would only be $29,000 of savings, is what you're saying, in regards to the Department of Aging contract. Am I correct in that?
I'm not sure I understood the
Okay.
question. I assume if the costs were there, the cost of the county would
I
increase.
understand. What I'm just saying is, with the Department of Aging, you made a bid, and it's coming in at $35,000, roughly $35,000 under what we're paying right now.
Correct.
Yeah, the numbers aren't exact, depending on how many meals we serve, but it's going to be between 37 and 38 is what I'm estimating.
Well, let's just do 35 round numbers.
Sure.
If we think that the cost to gas, everything, for the Meals on Wheels, the Anson County Meals on Wheels project is not $6,000, but $12,000,
Okay.
okay? So that you'd be paying us $12,000, then the difference of the $6,000, $6,000 now to $12,000, would change the contract with the Department of Aging. So instead of saving $35,000, we'd only save $29,000.
We would have to readjust our bid, correct?
Okay, so
Yes.
whatever the number is, it just changes the value or of the savings for the Department of Aging.
Are we talking about the same amount of meals with a $35,000 savings?
How many meals a day is Anson?
It was 270. My numbers, I was
From
approximating 300. No, for Cabarrus. For Anson was 150.
What is the contract?
For Cabarrus,
Yeah.
270 meals per day.
I mean, what's the actual cost of the contract?
Mike, how much is the contract that if we were to agree with Aramark, how much is it per meal and how many meals are you estimating?
But
We're estimating 55,000 meals, and the contract price is $396.
So
That's $3.96 per meal compared to the next lowest bid, which was $4.65 per meal. And that's on page 90.
On page 90?
My question, I guess, is that we may have been hitting all around it here, so I have been, just if you're going to hit me with something, but we've got y'all bidding at $396 per meal. Punches is coming at $465 per meal. This is contingent, of course, upon us in an agreement where you lease part of the space and the new equipment in the jail to use that. And I guess maybe Chairman was kind of hitting on it as well, is that I guess my concern and maybe the perception is that are you automatically putting Punchies at a competitive disadvantage because is that going to be the true, in other words, is the true cost really captured for them, for Aramark, of what his cost would be? And the fact that we're not, there's no deal being done with using the county equipment or, you see what I'm saying? Do you understand where I'm coming from? I mean,
we certainly feel it is.
Yeah. Mhm.
They have an existing facility that they
Mhm.
operate breakfast, lunch, and dinner,
Mhm.
have no extra costs.
Mhm. Do they cook on site with that? Where do they prepare their meals at?
They prepare their meals on 29 at their restaurant.
At their
Right.
restaurant, okay.
So, I mean, I can't answer that.
Yeah, I mean, I
it's-
don't know where you can
They're
capture that or
not
not, but that's-
utilizing our facilities
Right.
to prepare the meals, so
Mhm. I just wanna
I
make
would
sure
see
that
there
if there's
is some
equivalent-
advantage to
Mhm.
being in a county facility
Mhm.
as far as overhead and equipment and upkeep and maintenance and wear and tear and those kind of things. But
Mhm.
I don't know that we'll ever get that balanced out.
Mhm.
I'm still trying to figure out where the $35,000 come from. Is the difference in your bid and Punch's bid or last year's bid?
Your bid, Aramark's bid versus Punchy's bid, the difference is
That's talking about this year,
$37,950.
not got nothing to do with
No,
last
no,
year.
this is the proposal for this
Right.
coming fiscal year.
Okay, that's
So
where
those are the bids.
$35,000 is.
Correct, so it's taking 55,000 meals and multiplying it by the two bids.
Who had the contract last year?
Punches.
Punch's did?
Mhm.
What was their bid last year?
Same, there's no price increase.
Same price?
Yes.
Who cooks the meals for the jail now?
Aramark.
Okay.
Yeah. So we don't get that confused. Aramark already has a contract with the jail.
Just so there's no confusion, the food won't be the same food. I mean, I think that through the contract, it's specified that what they have to have there. Not saying the jail food's bad, but there is a little bit.
There is a perception.
Yeah.
But there are strict guidelines that we have to comply with to meet 1/3 recommended daily allowance for older adults and that kind of thing. So they're going to have to comply with the federal regs on the food they serve.
Well, I guess that's the question I had too, is go with Anson, you go with those things. It says in our facility is using, how does this come up against our local food policy? Is this going to be the same requirements that we do for our own public facilities or where we
The
require?
contract actually, which is one of the additions that's on, I know one page of it's on 239, but it does include a requirement that 10% of the food is sourced from North Carolina.
Right.
Okay.
To be consistent with the 10%.
And we already do that at
pledge.
If I can speak to that too,
Yeah.
Kevin had given me some information a while back when the 10% first came up, and I submitted that to Aaron Newton, and he was pleased with that. It's well above 10%,
Okay.
because most of the things that they get that are local are dairy products that are produced in North Carolina, so that puts them way above 10% for our contract.
Okay.
What happens in the current contract with Airmark now? The sheriff's department owns the equipment, the coolers, the grill, whatever that may be. If one of the coolers is not, if it goes out, is not operating properly, and Airmark's product is in the cooler, and they lose that product, what happens then? Does Airmark, how does that work? It seems to be a little tricky that the county owns the equipment, but Airmark's using it, and the county's responsible for replacing the equipment or upkeep on the equipment, but it's their responsibility to clean the equipment. And I know how dirty that equipment gets, and you have to keep it cleaned. How does that work?
This contract is not unique to all the contracts we have. We have an on-site facilities director, our food service director, I'm sorry, that if there were equipment malfunctions would report them to the facility. And then
Okay.
we have a
That works for Airmark, correct?
No.
Okay.
We do have facility services. That's a service
Right.
Airmark provides. That's not a contract that we currently have with Cabarrus County.
Okay. So whenever there's an issue, there's someone at the sheriff's department, you're saying that?
Well, yeah, we would
Yes.
notify them. In a lot of cases, we contact the individuals that would come in and repair or replace or
Okay.
whatnot.
It just seems like that gets a little tricky.
Well,
them
they pretty
coolers-
much, it's like with the old kitchen now, they would let us know if there was an issue, and we would contact who we needed to. Now we've got it a little bit different, because we do have a company that does the maintenance for our building, and that's who we would contact, and they would get someone out there to work on whatever equipment's there. And if we find it's, possibly due to something they've done, we've worked things out in the past, we've actually
Okay.
put something in the contract this time that they'll have some responsibility for some of that also,
Okay.
as far as cost.
Right. That's why if they neglect the equipment,
Right.
then I don't feel that the county should be,
Right.
Replacing the equipment that's neglected.
Yeah, that's actually another paragraph that's added to the renewal of the contract.
And we've added that a third party would inspect it and deem if it was above and beyond normal wear and tear.
I want to ask Mike, on the providing the meals for the Department of Aging, for that group, where does the money come from to pay for the meals?
We have funding through the Home and Community Care Block Grant, and then it's matched, and there's a subsidy of county dollars in that budget also. So it's a combination of federal, state, and local dollars into this. Now, we also have an agreement with Mecklenburg County and Rowan County, where some of their residents participate. Rowan County has folks in Kannapolis that participate in our program. Mecklenburg has seniors that are participating in Harrisburg and Midland. They reimburse us for those meals. So we have some income coming from the agreements with the other counties, and then we have a program where it's client contributions. We can't deny anybody service if they don't pay, but we encourage people to pay what they can. So we bring in, I want to say it's around $75,000 in contributions from their participants. I'd have to check that figure, though. It was, no, it's not that much. It's about 75 cents. It's about somewhere around $40,000, I think, in contributions from the clients themselves. So
Okay, so if there's a $35,000 savings, just to use that number, where is that savings used? I mean,
It's-
does the
it's-
county put less money in?
Yes.
Does the federal government put less money in?
no. We're going to spend the grant funds first, and then it would go back into the general fund.
Okay, it come back into the county's general fund?
Yes.
So, that's what I was trying to tie in is, Commissioner White, what you were getting at with this other contract. My thing with it is, we wouldn't want to subsidize, if you will, through the lease agreement, what's being provided to Anson County with that $35,000. So you don't want to, I mean, I wouldn't really look at it as we don't save as much money, because then we are in essence subsidizing another county's program. We don't have true numbers, obviously, on the brand-new kitchen over here, because it's brand new. You don't know what it's gonna cost to run it for the jail program that you have to run it for. So you don't know what the incremental cost difference is gonna be. You're guessing at it based on what goes on in other counties, but you don't have any data at this point in time to show that, this is what it costs if we weren't doing the other program with you, and this is what it's gonna cost, what incremental difference is gonna be, which is what that $6,000 should be covering, is the incremental difference of our cost. So what I was trying to get at is, if there's savings, if it's come, and I wanted to make sure it wasn't federal dollars that were being saved versus local dollars, because if you're saving local dollars and it comes back in the general fund, then at least at the end of a year, is this a year contract?
Yes.
Okay, so at least at the end of the year, we'd have some kind of data. We couldn't separate the costs out, because we won't have a year of operations, if you will, of using the kitchen without knowing what that Anson County portion, that extra portion is, or the Department of Aging portion is. When it comes, if there's a savings, since Pam's not here, I have to ask you, sorry. If there's a saving as it comes back into the general fund, then how would that money be reappropriated?
It would just go into the fund balance. It wouldn't be reappropriated.
Okay, so just if something, somewhere else you'd monitor it, and if we made a change at some point in time during the year.
Right, there's a line item for that particular purpose, and if it's not, if all the money in that line is not necessary to achieve the level of service that we've contracted for, then it would just stay there.
Okay,
And then roll into the fund balance at the end of the year.
okay. That's what I want to make sure of. I don't have a problem with using the equipment and getting good usage out of equipment that we've already invested a lot of money in. My biggest concern would be at the end of the year, trying to somehow make a determination if the $6,000 credit is the right amount of a credit. And I think that's the only thing. Right now, we're just kind of grasping at some data that really isn't appropriate for us. And I'm not certain how you're going to be able to do that, because if the refrigerators are going, they're going. I mean, they're going to be going 24/7. So it's not like, we're going to say, well, there's more refrigeration costs because we have food in there that's being used for Anson County or for the senior citizen here, the Department of Aging here. Now, if you normally would turn off the ovens and everything at a certain time, and you ran them longer just to do this extra food, you might be able to come up somehow, with a valuation on that. I guess towards the end of the year, if there's any way that you can kind of see when you're using equipment in addition to what you normally would be doing, there might be some way to make sure that $6,000 is an appropriate amount, so that, presuming that next year's bids come in similar, we would know if that was the right amount or if that amount needed to be adjusted. And I'm not certain that that's that critical, but I wouldn't want to be subsidizing something in the sheriff's pot versus the Department of Aging pot. So, does that make sense? Because you're the one's going to, staff's the one's going to have to look at it.
I think the better thing
Between now and then.
in talking about the subsidy, number one, but also what is the true value of the contract that Punchy's is at $465 versus Airmark at $396? Because the $396 is set with the idea that it's only going to cost, or it's going to be a credit of $6,000. If that number is actually different, then the $396 goes up to $4, $425, who knows?
Right.
It won't, I don't think it'll exceed the $465. But then we're looking at a different situation where we're truly comparing apples to apples. And I think that as best we can, that needs to be determined. What is the true value of the lease of if Airmark were to use the kitchen for the Anson County Meals on Wheels program, what's the true value of that lease? And
the true value of the lease for the Department of Aging.
Exactly, and that way we can look at it and say, is this truly a savings or not? So I don't know how quickly staff can get that together, if they can do it in the next 2 weeks or not, or,
I'm not positive, but we can certainly look at it. It's kind of, I think you can make some assumptions. So if the savings is $38,000 roughly from the low bid, which was Aramark's compared to Punchy's, then I guess all things being equal, you would assume that $37,000 would be the value of the lease, right? That's the value of the space that's being used, or some savings that's involved that enables the company to bid lower. And so I'm not sure exactly how we would determine what the fair market value is of the space over there, but we can certainly take a stab at it. And if then you can divide that by the number of meals, then you have also an idea of what it would be for the meals that are being done to serve Anson County, and you can determine whether or not that's $6,000 a year or not.
Well, I guess my point would be, for example, with the schools, when they have to get a building permit, we say, okay, you need to pay for the building permit because we want to identify the cost. So for me, this is similar. Do we need to identify the cost for Department of Aging in the same way so that we can track the true cost of the program and make sure that we're not undercutting another business by having the jail over there, by having that kitchen over there? And I'm not exactly certain how you would do that, but that would be, I guess that's what I'm looking at, is that we've tried really hard to treat everybody equally, and are we still treating everybody equally in this situation? I mean, I'm all for a savings, don't get me wrong. And if
Right.
that's a savings, I think that's great. But I think we
understand
just need to
completely.
make sure that we're treating people fairly.
Right, and so there might not be like a complete black and white answer to this. So as you pointed out earlier, Liz, county has sunk a fair amount of money into the equipment and the space area that's in the kitchen. So the sunk cost is one that the county has incurred. So what does the county get in return for that? By an arrangement like this, it is a way of trying to have some of that, receiving some sort of return on the investment that the county's made. On the other hand, do you view it as unfairly disadvantaging a local company? And I think it's really kind of becomes an issue that you have to weigh, maybe using not just dollars and cents or just a number of factors. It becomes a complicated sort of decision, I think.
I
and
agree,
I
it's
think
complicated.
Commissioner Measmer put a pretty interesting aspect of it, is the constant use of the equipment would also have it quicker, or a quicker breakdown, I should say. So that we need to factor that into it as well.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to add too is I think it's more of I think the $6,000 is an extremely low presumption, I think, but I understand that by combining those two could potentially bring it in lower, and that's what's happened. However, the quality, one thing I think that should be discussed as well is the quality of meal for $3.96. I mean, obviously I don't, I've never had one of your meals, so I can't presume that, but, I think that's a low, I think that seems low, and it really breaks down to those 270 meals, what are you preparing those meals? And you're talking about the ovens and the grills, and those do, consume a lot of energy. So if Anson County, you're cooking a lot of meals that require the ovens to be on all day long, and are we subsidizing that? And so I think that's something. I understand that there's a savings of that $5,000, but I think there's some things there that should be worked out.
Well, in respect of what's required to serve, all of them had to serve had the same menu to bid by, didn't they?
Right, and Mr. Murphy can address that issue.
Yeah, they both did receive the same menus. One of the things is that, in our meetings with Aramark, they were talking about, and I think his words were, they have it down to a science. And they can figure the meal cost down to 1/100%, and they do this, institutionally through these programs and various types of catering and nutrition programs in different levels and all over the country. But they're bidding on the same specs. their cost factors come in based on pretty much the minimum specs. If it specifies a 4-ounce serving of vegetables, you get a 4-ounce serving. If you don't serve level servings, you're going to run out at the end of before you serve the number of meals that you serve. So our staff is trained to deal with those servings. If it's a 3-ounce portion of meat, you get a 3-ounce portion of meat. Now, what Punchies is doing, and this is, they're serving larger quantities and larger portions, and basically serving the same country-style food they serve in the restaurants. And it's because, well, one thing, it's simpler to order the same food instead of having ordered 2 different things. But they're also, they realize that their reputation hinges, if they're not serving the same quality food in the Nutrition Lunch Plus Club programs, it has an impact, whether it's positive or negative, on their restaurants. Our folks are eating in their restaurants on the weekends and the evenings and going to eat breakfast. Their families, their church members, and their friends are eating there. So they're going to have an impact. If they speak positively about it, it's a good impact. If they complain and speak negatively about it, it's a negative impact. So we're getting country-style, home-style cooking, pretty much same portion, same food you get in the restaurant now. And there's going to be some backlash from that if we change, because it's going to go to a more institutional formatted food. And, you know, we've done this before. Anytime you change contracts or change vendors, then we have some of those issues. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's negative. And 2 years ago, I said here talking to you about some issues we were having, and that's why we went out for bid and we changed. I told them last week, you know, so I've been doing this for 17, 18 years. The best caterer we ever had is the worst caterer we ever had. And we had them for several years, and we went somewhere, they lost the bid, went somewhere else, went back to them, but it depends on who's managing the kitchen and who's managing the business, and it just depends on all of those dynamics. But we're not going to get the same food. You know, we're getting the same food you get at Punchy's Diner when you walk in there, and we're not going to get that here. But we have talked about quality, and they understand they'll be held at the minimum requirements of the state and federal regulations that we have to comply with.
Good. Just one more. I mean, and I hear what you're saying, and I preface my remarks by saying that I know Aramark to be a very reputable, very good company. And I think that, you know, we won't go wrong, you know, with Aramark. But I'm wondering too, the message, because we've been, over the last several months, been really pushing the idea, and of course, both I want to meet local food requirements, been pushing the idea of a local sustainable economy. And here, you know, we're not saying that we don't have local people be working, obviously, here, because that's the way Aramark does their business. But, you know, we have that here up against directly, and I don't know whether it can be solved or not. I don't think it can be solved in this particular situation, but this is, I think, a case in point that we have a local business that can't compete price-wise with, you know, a volume institutional food service provider in a situation like this. And I don't know how you remedy that or how you address that with our current contracting laws and bidding laws and things like that we have in the state. And I think it's a state level, statewide issue. It's not just our local thing. So in this situation, we're saving a lot of money by going with the national institutional food service provider, but the local business is the one that loses out on it.
And I would presume that because it was bid, that we do need to go with the low bidder. Would that be correct? Or how does that
No,
work?
I think it depends. First of all, I think on food, I'm not sure that that's necessarily the case. I don't think it is, because it's a service. It's not like a.
There are some different
product.
regulations because it is a service, but I'm not the person to answer that. I mean, I'm not an expert there.
Well, let me say, I mean, I think we need to go ahead and I can make a motion for both G4 and G5 to place them on the agenda
I think it needs to be
in
placed
2
on new
weeks.
business.
Under new business.
And by
If
that-
there's any way to, and I'm just not certain at this point in time, that there is truly a way, other than to look at the savings and combine those numbers, to see what the value of our kitchen, using our kitchen is. Honestly, I've tried to figure out how cost effectively we could get that information. You know, we can tell Susan over there, we can tell staff to do all kinds of stuff, and she could spend days and days and days and still not really be able to identify anything. I'm not certain that's the best use of of staff's time to do that. It's a one-year contract. We can look at it in a year from now, you know, if the Department of Aging doesn't like the food provided, then you're gonna put it out for bid again. And we'll see how that goes. We may be able to get a year under our belt of using that cafeteria space, that kitchen space, get some idea of what the costs are, which I'm sure we'll be able to do. Compare it to where we were before and try to extrapolate some numbers. I hope this equipment's much more efficient, though, than the old equipment. Otherwise, you know, that would be a problem. And, you know, you do need to, we have a lot of money in that equipment. If this is one way to get some of that money back, then that's a good thing, too.
Or wear it out quicker.
Huh?
Or wear it out quicker.
And if we wear it out quicker, I would presume that staff has looked at how long that this equipment should last. You're not gonna wear out a refrigerator quicker,
No,
because it's gonna be running all the time.
The
Now,
cooking equipment you
some of the ovens, but if you're running it an hour longer, I'm just picking a number, 2 hours longer than you would otherwise,
It probably won't hurt nothing.
I don't think it's gonna do a whole lot. If you're running it 24 hours a day, then that might be a problem. Then we're gonna suck up so much energy. But anyway, I mean, I think that over the course of the next year, before this comes up again, we can get feedback from Department of Aging participants. What do they
We'll
think?
definitely get that.
Yeah, I got a feeling you're gonna get lots of feedback. I don't know if I will, but you will.
Well,
We're gonna have to look at, you know, what we've budgeted anyway on using everything in this building, not just the kitchen space. And we look at it a year from now and figure out if this is the best arrangement or not. Because I'm sure staff, knowing Pam as well as we all do, and Susan as well as we do, they're gonna be watching all these things very closely to figure out where we are and where we thought we were gonna be and where we really are, so.
Well, I think
that's
the
fine.
best.
I'll make that motion, though, to add these two under new business.
I think the best approach we can take, the staff can take to try and getting you the information you want to try and to make this decision is to try and really determine what is the real value of the kitchen that the company has access to. Because if they were anywhere else and they were bidding on this, they've got that cost. So if you add that cost into the bid, then you find out whether it's, you know, really competitive bid or whether it's not. And so that's the approach we can take to this, and then it's a decision of you know, whether you want to lease the space, which may be a better way to do this anyway, to actually lease the space and then have a more competitive, or have a comparative bid that is, as someone said earlier, apples to apples, that reflects what the actual cost of the kitchen facilities is, as well as the labor. So that might be the approach for us to take that will give you the information that you need to make a decision.
We got a motion to place this under new business. We have a second.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Is
Motion
that items
carries.
G4 and G5?
Say what?
Is that
That's
item
G4 and G5.
Okay.
just for your information, our contract is gonna be an 11-month contract this time because our contract ends the end of July, and we're trying to get on the same cycle as the jail. So our first contract will be 11 months, and
Okay.
then the contract reads it can be renewed for 2 one-year terms, and they would be 12-month terms. But the first term is an 11-month term to get us on the same cycle with the jail, since our contract is contingent upon the contract with the jail,
Okay.
just for
So
clarity.
maybe in March or April, you can come and tell us how you think things are going?
Yeah, we can look at this probably by January. I mean, we'll look at it first 5 or 6 months.
I'll give you
and-
enough time, 6 months at least for your
Right.
operating to
And see where we
get an
stand.
idea of what you think, how you think things are going.
Sure.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Next is the Tax Administration Progress Report of the 2012 Revaluation Project. Mr. Wiesner, Mr. Ferris. It's on page 132 of our agenda.
Good afternoon, everyone. Revaluations are fairly dull until we send out notices, and then they become very exciting. So we're in the dull part now. So I passed out a flow chart that we kind of track our progress on the revaluation to you, and I think you've seen some iteration of this in the past, but we've tried to reformat it a little bit to make it a little bit easier to follow. You can look at the top section that's in yellow, and that's basically the development of our schedule of values and the adoption process of the schedule of values. And that's what we've been going through since last September. Where in the far right-hand column, you can see the percent of completion. You can see that that phase of the project is almost complete, with the exception of the adoption of the schedule of values. We'll be bringing these schedules, and for those of you who are not familiar with the schedule of values, that's our appraisal manual that we use to conduct our appraisals. A fairly thick document. We'll be bringing that to you in August to start the adoption process. The adoption process takes about 3 months to go through the presentation to you, the public hearing, and then the adoption, and then it has to lay open for public inspection and the right for them to appeal the schedule of values. So that'll be starting up in August. A lot of that's preliminary work, obviously, and I won't read through all the column on the left-hand side, but that's a lot of the preliminary work that we go through to establish our schedules and to get the project started before we actually start doing actual on-site appraisals. Now, we have started. If you go down into the section that has predominantly blue in it, you can see the first part is the commercial appraisal. And you can see that we really haven't done any commercial appraisal yet as far as what we've put on this report. Doesn't mean we haven't done anything. We've done quite a bit. We've started quite a few of the commercial neighborhoods, and we've done quite a bit of work in those neighborhoods, but we just haven't gotten them to the point that we've completed them to the point we can count them on here. So we're a little bit behind where we wanted to be in the commercial appraisal at this point, but I'm not concerned about that. And down in the residential section, you can see that we're a little bit ahead of schedule there. We've conducted about 30% of our residential appraisals and have completed those neighborhoods. Chris can give you a little bit of an update on the commercial process. Chris is our real property manager, and he's oversees predominantly the commercial part of the project. So he can kind of give you an update on kind of where we stand with that.
Well, I've sent out income questionnaires to the public, and we sent out 3,100 letters out. Had a little over 10% respond, 351. They're still trickling in. I'm using those to help build a capitalization rates per building to come up with an income approach to value. Once I've finalized those sheets to put into our schedule of values, we should have a better grip on where we stand with the commercial aspect of it. So it's been a great response and great turnout. I've also contacted some appraisal companies, banks, lending institutes, that sort, to try to help back up these cap rates from the public, and even going as far as using some national surveys this time. So hopefully I'll have all that in a spreadsheet and put into the schedule of values. And by the end of the month, we should be on our way. So,
obviously, in an economy like we're in right now, we don't have very many sales in commercial industrial properties, and so we're going to have to look at a lot of the income approach and the capitalization rates and trying to come up with an income value to those properties. So that makes it a little more difficult than a typical revaluation. The last time we had tons of sales in all types of properties. We don't have a lot of sales in residential, but we have enough that we feel like we can do a pretty good job with a market comparison approach on residential property. Residential property, the 30% of the properties that we've appraised so far, we are looking at a decrease in value of slightly less than 18% on those properties. Now, I can't say that that's a good representation.
You
of the
said
county.
18%, not 80%.
18%.
Okay.
Let's be clear on that. Not sure that that's a good representative figure for all residential, because we're not far enough into it to say that, but we will continue to report back to you over the next few months as to what that's doing. The green section down below, of course, is just our normal new construction maintenance that we do every year, picking up new construction and appraising that construction. We have data collectors out in the field doing that work for us while the appraisers work on the revaluation appraisals. And then the final review section down in the dark green, we anticipate finishing the initial appraisals at the end of November. We will spend about 6 weeks, December and half of January, doing kind of a final review and relook at all the statistics countywide. At that point, we'll be doing a final report to the commissioners and showing you what kind of statistics we've come up with and what type of value changes we have. And then at that point, we'll be ready to send out notices to taxpayers around the 1st of February and start the appeals process, which is long and hard. And will take up a majority of next year. So we'd like to answer any questions that you have about revaluation.
Any questions? Can you explain what the cap rate is? What that
Capitalization
means?
rate is a process where individual purchases property based on a percent return. And of course, the lower the capitalization rate is, the higher the value, and the higher the capitalization rate is, the lower the value. So it is the final step in producing a estimation of value in in what someone would want on a return on a business or a piece of property. So usually investors are looking between 8 and 10 years. Past several years, we got as low as 5 to 6%. I don't think we're going to see those numbers anytime this year, this revaluation. So, but it's not looking as bad as I thought it was from what I've calculated and got so far. So that's a good thing.
You said that what is the percent of residential properties that has been reviewed right now? You said you haven't gotten far into it. Is that
30%.
And is that 30% throughout the county or in one section of the county, or?
It's throughout the county. There's a mix of subdivisions and a mix of rural acreage properties.
Okay. When do you think you're going to be able to get back with us in regards to a more definitive, or where you think it's going to trend?
Once we get a little bit better handle on the commercial industrial, which we're going to be focusing on this month, so hopefully when we come back to you with the schedule of values next month, we'll have a much better picture of that.
Okay. When will we have the schedule of values? Can we start? The schedule of values is very difficult to get through and understand. You're going to present, the plan is to present it to us in August, and then we're not going to have questions or understand it in full, I would contest, and for some time. In September, will you be able to provide us with that information so that we can, or as we have questions of it?
We'll be happy to meet with you each month, and it'd probably be a good idea throughout the rest of the year. Now, with it being a long process, we'll present it to you at your first meeting in August so that you'll have availability to study it.
So that'll be August 1st.
Right.
Okay.
And then you'll have a public hearing in September, and so you won't actually be adopting these until October.
Okay.
So you have quite a long period to study.
So we'll
on
have
those
September the
questions.
5th and then October 3rd and the work sessions at least to be able to ask whatever additional questions that we have.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the question I got too, is that I guess for the public, what is contained in the schedule of values? And what does that consist of?
That's our total appraisal manual, and the 2008 schedule of values is currently on our website, and you can look at it. And of course, we take the last schedule of values and we build upon it and we change it. We don't obviously start from scratch every time we do these projects. So it's broken into 12 chapters, and it talks about different aspects of the appraisal. So we have our rules and standards for appraising land. We have our rules and standards for appraising how different types of structures. We have all of our square foot rates that we use. We have all of our depreciation tables that we use. We will have an income approach chapter that will talk about capitalization rates that we'll be using and expense ratios and things of that nature. So it's virtually everything that you need to know to, if you can kind of read that thing, you could actually take it and appraise your property with it.
Okay. And that's approved by us, and we approve that. If we approve that when it's being used now, and this is the crazy question that I'm sure somebody's going to ask. If we're already doing appraisals, but we're not approving a statement of values until almost on the tail end of it, how is it, so it's already being used to appraise even though we haven't approved it yet?
Right, but it's not finalized.
So if we went to change something,
If you
you'd have to go
change
back
something,
and-
we'd have to reapply. We'd have to reapply it.
Okay.
And so what you want to do, the schedule of values is kind of an old thing that came about many, many years ago. And it used to be you'd adopt your schedule of values
That's what I thought.
2 years before you did the appraisal.
Right. Mhm.
And then you'd use the schedule to come up with your appraisals. But now, as they push us to be closer and closer to market value, it's been widely accepted that we adopt our schedule of values on the tail end of the project. But far enough in advance of the end of it to allow the taxpayers to appeal it.
Okay.
And so if they appeal it and something gets changed, then we have time to react and make those changes to the schedule.
So that's more important than them getting the paper in the mail, is for the public to be involved when they see this come out and be able to inspect this. And however we want to put that, I guess we'll put it online or whatever, that they can see and read through this. That's going to be just as important as when they get their statement in the. It is
an important document because it does establish certain criteria that we use to appraise by. And it's especially important in a year in which you don't have a lot of data, because the schedule becomes very important to be consistent and be equitable among different types of property. It doesn't relieve us from the obligation to appraise your property at fair market value.
Right.
So you adopt the schedule and you apply the schedule, but if the schedule itself doesn't bring you to market value, then you still have to do something to get to market value. But we're saying that the schedule will get you to market value, and so that's why we adopt it fairly late in the process. We've had time to study it and to use it and to apply it, so we know it's going to allow you to get to market value.
Any other questions? Thank you all.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Next, we have, would be G7, if we could do G8 first, because that decision or discussion about that needs to be precede G7. So if we can go to G8, found on page 148. That is the approval of an interagency agreement for collaborative technology services. Mrs. Brandon, Dr. Probst.
And I have Dr. Probst here with me from Cabarrus County Schools, and Will Crabtree was going to be here, but obviously he called in sick. So the interagency agreement for collaborative technology services is an agreement that we're asking you to consider between the Cabarrus County government and the Kannapolis City Schools and Cabarrus County Schools to allow us to work together. Basically, we've been meeting every Monday now for a couple of months. We're working to identify infrastructure that we can share to reduce costs. We also want to maximize our abilities to provide students with access to the latest technology and start looking at an enterprise approach to our technology purchases through the three agencies. If we can purchase a piece of equipment that can be used by all three agencies, we'd like to be able to do that. The first project that we've identified is the co-location of data centers. In the past 3 years, Cabarrus County has been developing a disaster recovery and high availability plan in support of the E911 Center and our public safety efforts. And we have developed and built out 2 data centers, which has excess capacity. So if the school systems want to relocate and co-locate into our data centers, that will put us in a position for them to piggyback on the disaster recovery and high availability that we've already have in place. So that's essentially what we've been talking about, and it'll also help us to position ourselves in the future for looking at other projects. The next project we've talked about with Kannapolis, they've asked us to assist with, is desktop virtualization.
Ask her to explain that. Any questions from Mrs. Brandon or Dr. Probst? How about explaining the enterprise approach? How about explaining desktop utilization?
Virtualization.
Virtualization, excuse me.
Enterprise approach is essentially what I said. If you have a piece of equipment, you look to see what you would purchase if all 3 entities would be able to use it. For instance, a firewall, which is essential to the network. Do we need 3 firewalls, or if we're operating out of the same data center, can we operate with 1 firewall? That firewall, we would probably have to pay a little bit more money for than what Cabarrus County would pay, but the combined cost of the 3 agencies, buying 3 firewalls separately, it would still save us money.
Now, with the new computers coming out, there's been a lot of talk on the TV about cloud, doing everything on the cloud. How does that in comparison to enterprise system?
Well,
Or is
essentially.
it different? Or it's different but the same, isn't it?
It would be about the same. Cabarrus County we would become our own cloud.
Mhm.
So we may be providing services for one of the school systems, or maybe one of the school systems might have something they could provide for the other school system or for Cabarrus County. So we have 2 storage area networks. That's the lease that's coming up next, where we replicate our data for our disaster recovery between the 2 systems. The school systems don't have that in place right now. So if we add a little bit of storage and we co-locate, then we can provide the school systems with the ability to have disaster recovery.
How about keeping the integrity of the data or the information in there protected that needs to be protected?
It would be protected the same way that we protect.
Well, I mean,
Cabarrus County.
how does the county not have access to the school system, the school system not have access to the county information if neither is supposed to be looking at the other information? How do you do that?
With our current SAN, we allocate blocks of storage essentially to a server that's administered by the school system. And the school system administrator has the password to that server, and it would be as if you had a hard drive in that server, but it's actually in our SAN. Our 1s and 0s live together, the way the SAN works, but we wouldn't have direct access to that information.
Okay.
The security is more on an application level.
How about the desktop virtualization? Is that like a VPN network?
No, desktop virtualization is where we're sort of going back to the old days of the mainframe, where most of the processing is in the server environment instead of on the desktops. For instance, Kannapolis City Schools have netbooks, but they can't upgrade those netbooks to Windows 7. But if we do a desktop virtualization where actually the processes are running on the server instead of on the netbooks, they will be able to put Windows 7 on those netbooks.
Is that going to have to increase T1s between the different data points and the servers?
We'll definitely have to look at the bandwidth capacities between the schools, but right now there's a large capacity, 100 meg connections between the schools. We're also looking at some existing fiber that we might be able to light up that will increase capacity to some of the high schools.
The Q-scabs that we did, some of it's talking about wireless, some of it's talking about switches and servers. Has the county been involved in trying to use our purchasing power to reduce those costs, number one? And number two is, I don't know if any wiring is needing to be done, but if that is the case, has the county been contacted so that all of this is kind of working in conjunction with one another? In other words, I think it'd be a complete waste of money to rewire a building with something other than Cat 5. And if the school system says we want something that's not Cat 5, well, that's not going to be able to run on the systems and run the information and the data we're trying to help them with.
It would be my preference that this committee be able to review those Q-scabs to make sure that if we are going to go forward with the working together and the data center co-location, that those purchases are in line with the network plans for that. At this time, we have not discussed that.
Is that something do you see a problem with that in the school system, Dr. Probst?
I'm going to defer that to Lynn Wiki, as he mentioned, that we have to have designers for those projects. I will tell you, it is I believe, our belief, especially Mr. Wiki, if we can work together in the best interest of the county and the taxpayers, that's exactly what we'll do.
Okay.
The limitations with the designers, we're held to those standards that we've got to follow, but certainly going to be on the committee reviewing that. Our board at this point will be discussing this on August 1st.
Okay.
I would certainly hope that if we're working together, that our committee could come up with some technical requirements that could be given to the designer if there's an outside designer that has to be involved. But that has not happened at this time.
What are the realized savings that we're going to achieve in this or anticipate to achieve?
For I can just tell you the savings that we could avoid. I know that there was at one point, Cabarrus County Schools wanted to create a secondary data center, and the estimated cost for that was $350,000. So that's what really led to us to begin
About a year ago.
speaking of that. Yeah, we started talking about that a year ago, that if we did do co-location, we could eliminate those costs. And then there's also the power and the cooling for the existing data centers. We're spending that 4 times. It would be 6 if the school systems had their own secondary system, or there would be additional costs if they decided to go out to the cloud and purchase this from a secondary provider.
Okay. Any other questions?
I guess just a comment, and I'm maybe thinking way out of the box, I may be out on the cloud somewhere. But I go looking and thinking of some other entities out there. We've got the Cabarrus Health Alliance that is moving a new facility, more likely to have new equipment, as well as PBH has just opened a new regional headquarters on Kannapolis Parkway. And I know from our discussions there, it's a big upgrade because they're going to be doing a huge amount of data processing from now up to 9 counties that will be in part of the PBH group. And then, of course, the research campus is that any other opportunities there for technical collaboration is, again, it's the same thing with the infrastructure. Instead of our running cables for our stuff, do they already have cables that are going to be, that we can take advantage of as far as that further collaboration? I don't know how when you get to the point where it gets so unwieldy you can't, it's no longer functional or no longer feasible to do that. But even the concept of, as we move to a cloud of the public entity data centers that any local public entity can plug into and become a part of, is that something that we could? I'm looking beyond just the county and school systems, but looking at these other public entities, that even the cities that could take advantage of that as well.
That's certainly a possibility, and we are already a service provider for the Health Alliance. We host their financials.
Okay.
Any other questions? We have a motion to place,
I'll make a motion to put
put it on the
G8, I guess, is the one.
on the consent agenda, or you want it on new business?
Well, I don't really care which one. I'm not certain that at this point in time it matters as much whether it's consent or new business to me. Because this is the interagency agreement, the agreement to work together with them. So I'm fine with it being under consent. The only reason to have it under new business, if for some reason we thought the general population needed more information on it, to show that if we want to discuss it, to show that we're trying to work together and to save dollars, that would be the reason to put it under new business. If it's under new business, I don't see that it would take very long, definitely not 30 minutes. We're expecting to let the presentation. That's what's on here. That's why it's kind of like,
In listening to the discussion, it seems it might be helpful to add an amendment to the agreement that says that this group, this consortium, would also be required to review any IT purchases or services that were made to ensure that they're consistent with the overall plan, just to kind of memorialize or institutionalize that requirement.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I know that in discussions, they're not here, Kannapolis City Schools, they were very eager to join into this partnership because they said that there was no way that they had the funds to do disaster recovery. And this was, a great thing for them to be able to get in and have this available to them. So, that would be money, if they did do it, it would be money that we would have to appropriate to do that. It doesn't make, for me, a whole lot of sense for us to appropriate money to replicate something that we already can use what we have and therefore save. So I'd make a motion to put under new business and to add that.
Okay.
That this committee would work with the construction committee for each system that are doing the QZABs and any future technology purchases.
We got a motion with.
That's okay. That's good. Because that's kind of what you said.
I'm going to defer at this point that our board has not met until
Board of
August
Education
1st.
needed to-
So
yeah.
thank you for
Well-
asking those questions.
All right, so do we need to approve this
Not
before
today.
it goes? We wouldn't do it today, I know.
Yeah.
Would we, if it's not going to them till their August 1st meeting, do we need to have this on our agenda this month? We need to go ahead and approve it and then present it to them for their consideration in August? Is that what we're?
That's what I'd like to do.
Okay.
And
Then-
I had the motion to approve with the county manager to have the ability to negotiate. You know, the concept is that we will work together, and moving forward, there will be a schedule appended to this each time. If there was a funding request that wasn't budgeted for, you know, for the schools, then we would be coming back and asking for that money. But other than that, we would just be working together to save money.
Right.
Look
And I
for
think it's
ways.
great that you're working together. I mean, that's what we've been striving for as long as any of us have been associated with both systems. I mean, it's a good thing to work together with it, so.
We got a motion, we have a second. We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion carries. Thank you. Next, going back to G7, which is found on page 133, is the storage area network lease extension. Mr. Shanley?
Board, this is the piece that Ms. Brandon, excuse me, Ms. Brandon was talking about, a key piece that we would share. This is the storage piece that where our ones and zeros live together. We were already in the process of renewing our lease and doing a couple pieces when this collaboration came back up this year. Basically, by doing this, we're going to expand our storage area network to 66 terabytes of data, basically expanding our current obligation $2,000 additional a month.
So we're going to 66 terabytes for $2,000 more a month.
Correct. And this will support both, we feel that this expansion.
That's like going from like a two-lane road to a superhighway.
Correct. And based on our evaluations of, my team has met with both of the school systems and looked at their current size. We feel that this will last the full lease. So it's a 3-year lease.
Okay. Any questions? Have a motion to place this under consent?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all. I believe that covers everything that we were supposed to discuss today, other than going into a closed session. Is that correct, Mrs. Honeycutt? Commissioner Caruth?
Yeah, I just had a couple things. I wanted-
G9 under changes to the agenda, there's a G9, do we? Sorry,
What page is that?
226.
Oh, yeah.
This is the voting delegate to the NCACC Annual Conference. Where's that going to be held?
I think it would be here.
We don't have any excuse this time.
Do you know what time that the voting normally takes place?
It's
Or
Saturday
what day?
afternoon.
Saturday afternoon, isn't it?
Well, I'll volunteer to be a delegate if
The
you know what everybody
nominations
else
are
says.
closed. All in
I'm
favor?
so happy.
Yeah, but-
I'm so happy it's here and a week sooner than it's normally been.
So-
I'll be there definitely on Saturday, so.
We
I
have,
mean, anybody else can do it too if you want to.
I can't be it. I have to disclose. I cannot be severe conflict of interest for me to be voting delegate.
so Commissioner Poole has nominated herself as being a voting delegate.
Volunteering. But we do need an alternate, just in case.
Well, we have faith in you.
And I would,
Just in case I get sick.
and I would urge anybody else on the board that would like to sit through the business session of the annual conference on Saturday afternoon. It is something to behold, to sit through the business session.
And, I mean, and the reason I'm volunteering is that I have, if it's a weekday, then I would have a problem. I've been to them on Saturday before, but that's kind of why I was kind of interested in going to the business sessions. But you can volunteer.
So we're gonna place Commissioner Poole as voting delegate on the consent agenda. We have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Now I believe that covers everything.
I do have one thing, Mr. Chairman, a couple things I need to ask about. We were going to do a recognition from Mr. Quickle at our July meeting. I know
We were trying to figure out if he's going to be available.
Oh, okay.
Is
Okay.
he going to be available?
I'm not sure. I haven't talked to him. That's what, okay, that's what I was wondering about. That's the reason I asked the question.
You want to handle that? You going to talk to him and see?
I can.
I mentioned it to him.
Yeah.
At the last WASAC meeting.
Yeah, we want this big off
And I
all this,
mentioned to
just
him the
make sure.
date, but I haven't followed up either because of the holidays. so.
Yeah, same way here.
You're
If
gonna
you'll
do
follow-
that, or
if you'll-
me?
If somebody will follow up and get back with Mrs. Honeycutt.
Okay. The other one, and I don't know whether, I know that we had some discussion, John, about, and it was that Mike and Pam are not here today, but Mike especially, but on PBH, there was a resolution they wanted us to adopt regarding the merger, and I know we were kind of holding it up because we're waiting to resolve the Lake Concord Road property, and I don't know anything new on that from them, or,
Yeah, that's right. And also, Rich Cook is not here, who is the one who's been kind of at the middle of that, so I don't have an answer, I'm sorry.
So if
What it is
everybody
is-
gets to look at
Well,
it
we can-
and everything, you
Yeah,
want to add it.
what it
have the
is
option
that
to put it on
anytime,
yours.
under the current state law regarding the area programs, we have to approve any mergers or any dissolution of the area program. And that, what has happened is PBH by them, by the board voting to merge with Alamance Caswell, then we have, every member county has to approve by resolution. of
Well,
whether or
Rich
not
can
that-
look at that when he gets back, and then we can,
Yeah.
if he's prepared to present it to us on the 19th, then we can go ahead and do that possibly.
Mhm.
Will that be satisfactory, Commissioner?
Yeah,
Cook?
that's fine, that's fine.
Okay,
I just
why don't
want to
we
see
do
what
that?
status was. I know that, we've also been, I know, working on the issue regarding the property we own on Lake Concord Road that we leased to them, but the land itself is owned by the hospital, so there's some issues going on there.
Okay.
That's got to be straightened out as well, so.
Anything else?
That's it.
We have a motion to go into closed session. We have a motion, we have a second, and I would assume that includes inviting Mr. Cox and Mr. McDaniels to present to us about the location or expansion of businesses. We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion carries. We will adjourn after the closed session.